Everyone abandoned this alien girl. Except the human soldier, the war had already swallowed countless worlds, leaving them in ruins. The Shaurith were ruthless conquerors, a cold and terrifying species whose empire had spread like a plague across the galaxy. They had crushed civilizations, turned peaceful planets into wastelands, and now they were heading towards a peaceful, unassuming world known as ZH-Lore. ZH-Lore was home to the ZH-Lorians, an elegant and intelligent species known for their advanced telepathic abilities. The ZH-Lorians had always been peaceful diplomats, mediating between various factions and races throughout the galaxy. They didn't believe in war, and they didn't believe in violence. But the Shaurith didn't care for peace. They didn't care for negotiations or diplomacy. They wanted control, and they would take it by any means necessary. Sergeant Nathan Ward knew this well. He had been one of the soldiers stationed on the front lines, a human fighting to stop the Shaurith from destroying more innocent lives. Humanity had always been seen as weak in the eyes of many, divided, inexperienced, and often too unpredictable. But over the years, Nathan had witnessed firsthand how humans, when pushed to their limits, became an unstoppable force. They didn't give up. They didn't surrender. And that's why Nathan was still fighting, even when the odds seemed impossible. The ZH-Lorian homeworld was falling, and the galaxy's council had already abandoned them. The Shaurith were too powerful, their war machines too advanced. The ZH-Lorians, with all their wisdom and power, were unable to fight back. Their telepathy was their strength, but against the Shaurith's mind-damping technology, they were helpless. The Council, afraid of provoking the Shaurith further, had decided that the ZH-Lorians were no longer worth saving. But not everyone had given up. Nathan stood on the ruined surface of ZH-Lore, the sky darkened by the smoke of burning cities. He had been given orders to retreat, to leave the planet behind and regroup with the rest of the human forces. It was the logical decision. The ZH-Lorians were done for, and there was nothing more to be done. Yet, something in Nathan's gut told him that he couldn't abandon them. The ZH-Lorians were allies. He had met them before, fought beside them in the Council's peacekeeping operations. And though his orders were clear, something about the situation didn't sit right with him. As the last remaining ZH-Lorian survivors scattered into the wilds, he felt a pull, an urge to find one last living soul. It was in the ruins of a crumbled city where Nathan found her. A ZH-Lorian girl no older than 15, her delicate face smeared with dirt and blood, her bright eyes wide with fear. She was crouching beside the remnants of a destroyed building, alone, completely alone. Nathan's heart tightened when he saw her. She was one of the last of her kind, abandoned by her people, abandoned by the Council. He knew what the Shaurith had done to her world, but seeing her now, fragile, terrified, and utterly alone, made him feel something deep in his chest. He could leave her like everyone else had. He could turn away and save himself, but something told him that would be a mistake. He took a cautious step forward. "Hey," he called gently, his voice a mixture of authority and kindness. The girl flinched, her eyes darting to him like a deer sensing danger. But then slowly she stood up. "You're human," she said, her voice soft but tinged with suspicion. Nathan nodded. "I am, but I'm not here to hurt you." The girl's eyes searched his face as if trying to read him. Her people had known nothing but betrayal. She had been taught to trust no one, especially humans, but there was something in Nathan's voice that made her hesitate. She stepped closer, her bare feet crunching on the rubble beneath her. They're all gone," she whispered, looking down at the ground. Nathan nodded grimly. "I know, the Shaurith, they destroyed everything, but we can't let them win, not yet." The girl's eyes flicked up to meet his, tears welling in her eyes. "Why are you still here, the Council? They abandoned us. They left us to die. Why are you different?" Nathan's heart sank. He had never been one for speeches, but there was something about this girl's pain that reached deep into him. "Because I don't leave people behind," he said simply. And I won't leave you." Her eyes widened in disbelief. You're going to protect me." He nodded again. "Yes, I'll do whatever it takes, but we have to move fast. The Shaurith are still out there. We need to find shelter before they come back for what's left of this planet." The girl stood still for a long moment, processing what he had said. Then she finally nodded and took a hesitant step forward. "My name is Lyra," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sergeant Nathan Ward," he replied. "It's good to meet you, Lyra." With that, they began their journey together, the unlikely pair moving through the wreckage of the ZH-Lorian world. Nathan kept a watchful eye on their surroundings as Lyra walked silently beside him. She was quiet, withdrawn, still in shock from everything that had happened. It was clear that she had no real hope left, no trust in anyone or anything. But Nathan had no intention of letting her give up. He couldn't change what had happened to her people, but he could do everything in his power to ensure she survived. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but with Lyra by his side, he wasn't about to let the Shaurith win. By the time nightfall came, the two of them had reached a small, abandoned shelter, a small cave that had once served as a ZH-Lorian outpost. Nathan knew they couldn't stay here long. The Shaurith would eventually track them down. But for the moment, it was enough. They needed rest, and they needed time to figure out what to do next. Nathan sat down on a rock, pulling out a ration pack and handing it to Lyra. She took it without a word, her eyes distant. She wasn't used to being cared for, let alone being protected by someone she had once seen as the enemy. But something in Nathan's quiet determination seemed to break through her walls, if only a little. As they ate in silence, Nathan couldn't help but think about the bigger picture. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Shaurith were still out there, and they had their sights set on more than just ZH lore. The entire galaxy was in danger. But with Lyra at his side, he felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Lyra finished her food and looked over at Nathan. "You're really going to help me, even after everything?" Nathan met her gaze, his expression serious. "I don't leave people behind, not if I can help it." For the first time since their meeting, a flicker of something like hope sparked in Lyra's eyes. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep her going. Nathan woke early the next morning, the faint light of the rising sun piercing through the cracks of their shelter. His body ached from the long hours of travel the day before, and the weight of responsibility felt heavier with each passing moment. But he didn't mind. The promise he had made to Lyra, the promise to protect her, kept him focused. She had become something more than just a mission or a responsibility. She had become someone he needed to protect at all costs. Lyra was already awake when he glanced over at her. She was sitting cross-legged on the ground, her eyes closed in concentration. The faintest shimmer of light pulsed around her, as if she was trying to focus her mind. Nathan watched her for a moment, unsure of what she was doing. He had seen her use her telepathy briefly the day before when she had sensed his intentions, but the power was still unpredictable. She opened her eyes, catching his gaze. "I'm trying," she said softly, her voice tinged with frustration. "Trying?" Nathan asked, leaning forward. "What are you trying?" "To connect," she replied, her fingers twitching. "To find something, a memory, a way to fight back. The Shaurith took everything. I can't remember much, but sometimes I feel like there's something inside me I can still access. Something that might help." Nathan's brow furrowed as he listened. He had heard stories of the ZH-Lorians' powers, how they could access each other's minds and even share knowledge, but he had never seen it in action until now. "What's stopping you?" he asked. "I can't focus," Lyra admitted. "It's like a wall inside my mind. Every time I try, I hit it. I've tried so many times, but it's just gone." She looked away, her expression filled with frustration and sorrow. Nathan didn't have the answers to her problems, but he knew one thing for sure. If there was a way to unlock her abilities, they would find it. "Listen," Nathan said, standing up and stretching his stiff muscles. "We've got a long road ahead. We'll figure it out together. But for now, we need to get moving. The Shaurith won't stop until they have us both. We can't afford to sit still." Lyra nodded, her eyes still clouded with doubt, but she stood up, dusting herself off. She wasn't ready to give up just yet, not with someone like Nathan by her side. The days that followed were a blur of travel and evasion. Nathan led Lyra through the dense forests and ruined cities, always on the move, always looking over his shoulder. They had to avoid Shaurith patrols, who scoured the surface of the planet for survivors. But Nathan was experienced in these kinds of operations. He knew how to hide in plain sight, how to track their movements, and how to keep them one step behind. Lyra, for her part, was slowly starting to regain some control over her telepathic abilities. It was clear that she wasn't yet fully in control, but her mind was beginning to open up in small ways. She could sense his emotions, and sometimes in the quiet moments when the two of them were alone, she would reach out with her mind just to feel his presence. It wasn't much, but it was progress. One evening, as they rested in a secluded cave, Lyra spoke up, her voice hesitant. "I feel something, it's faint, but it's there." Nathan looked up from the fire he was tending. "What do you mean?" "Something inside my head, a memory, a connection to something bigger. I think I'm close, Nathan. I think I can unlock it." Nathan's heart raced. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. "That's good, Lyra. That's really good. But don't push too hard. You need to be ready for what comes next." Lyra nodded, but her focus was already turning inward, her brow furrowed in concentration. Nathan knew she was trying to reach that elusive piece of her power, that hidden knowledge. He wasn't sure what it would look like when she unlocked it, but he was certain it would be the key to defeating the Shaurith. Days turned into weeks as Nathan and Lyra continued their journey. The longer they traveled, the more their bond deepened. Lyra had started to trust Nathan in ways she hadn't trusted anyone before. She began to see him not just as a soldier, but as someone who genuinely cared for her well-being. Nathan, for his part, began to understand Lyra's struggle. She was a young girl thrust into a war she never asked for, forced to carry the weight of her entire people's survival on her shoulders. One night, as they camped near an old HFY outpost, Lyra finally made the breakthrough they had been hoping for. She closed her eyes and reached deep into her mind, pushing through the barriers that had once held her back. And then it happened. She felt it, a sudden surge of energy like a dam breaking, releasing a flood of memories, knowledge, and power. Nathan was sitting nearby when he noticed the change. The air around Lyra seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy, and her eyes flashed open, glowing faintly. "I did it," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "I remember." Nathan's heart leaped. "What do you remember?" Lyra closed her eyes again, her face scrunching in concentration. "The HFYans weren't just peaceful diplomats. We were the guardians of something, something powerful. We had a weapon, an ancient device hidden away. A weapon capable of turning the tide of the war. I can see it now, it's real, I can feel it inside me." Nathan leaned in, his interest piqued. "Where is it? How can we use it?" Lyra shook her head. "I don't know, it's all blurry. But I know it's in the heart of the Shaurith stronghold. That's where we need to go." Nathan stood up, his heart racing. The Shaurith stronghold was the last place they wanted to be, but if there was a weapon hidden there, something that could change the course of the war, then they had no choice. They had to go there. "We'll need help," Nathan said. "We can't do this alone." Lyra nodded, a look of determination crossing her face. "We won't be alone, I can feel it. The resistance is out there, we just need to find them." Nathan knew she was right. The galaxy wasn't entirely lost. There were still factions, groups of rebels, defectors, and survivors who had refused to give up. They would find them. They had to. With renewed hope, Nathan and Lyra set out again, this time with a clear purpose. They were going to infiltrate the Shaurith stronghold, find the weapon, and change the course of the war. It wouldn't be easy. The Shaurith would be expecting them, and the dangers ahead were unimaginable. But with Lyra's newfound power and Nathan's unshakable resolve, they were ready to take on whatever came next. The days that followed were filled with tense planning and cautious travel. They moved swiftly, using their skills to stay hidden from Shalrith patrols and gather information. Lyra's telepathic abilities were growing stronger, and with each passing day, she could sense more about the people around her. She could hear their thoughts, feel their emotions, and even influence them in small ways. It was both a blessing and a curse, but she was learning to control it. But despite their progress, they were running out of time. The Shalrith were closing in on them, and the window for action was shrinking. Nathan knew they had to act fast. They had to find the resistance, learn about the weapon, and strike before it was too late. The path ahead was uncertain, and the danger was real. But Nathan and Lyra had something now: hope. And with hope, they would fight for the future, not just of their people, but of the entire galaxy. The days passed quickly as Nathan and Lyra continued their journey toward the heart of the Shalrith stronghold. Their mission was clear: infiltrate the enemy's base, find the weapon that could change the tide of the war, and use it to stop the Shalrith. But with every step they took, the danger grew, and so did the weight of their responsibility. Lyra's powers were continuing to evolve. The more she practiced, the more control she gained over her abilities. Her telepathic connection to Nathan had grown stronger, and she could now sense his emotions, even his thoughts, without him saying a word. At first, this connection had been overwhelming for both of them, but over time, they learned to live with it. Lyra could feel when Nathan was anxious or worried, and he could feel when she was scared or unsure. It was a constant, invisible thread between them. They had been traveling through dense forests, avoiding Shalrith patrols and hiding in abandoned settlements. They were getting closer to the heart of the enemy's territory, but they had to be careful. Every movement, every decision could be their last. The Shalrith were everywhere. One evening, as the sun set behind the horizon, they found themselves in an old HFY ruin. It was a quiet place, hidden deep within a mountainous region. The ruins were ancient, covered in vines and moss, but they held a strange energy, an energy that Lyra could feel deep inside her. It was as if the ruins were calling to her. Nathan sat down on a nearby stone, scanning the area for any signs of danger. He had learned to trust Lyra's instincts, and right now she seemed distracted, lost in thought. She was standing near an old HFY monument, her eyes closed in concentration. Nathan didn't interrupt. He had seen her focus like this before, and he knew she was working to unlock more of her powers. "Lyra," Nathan said softly after a long silence. "Are you okay?" Lyra opened her eyes slowly, and for the first time in days there was a new intensity in her gaze. "I can feel it, Nathan, the power. It's here." Nathan stood up and walked over to her. "What do you mean?" "I don't fully understand it yet," Lyra admitted, her voice steady but filled with awe. "But there's something in these ruins, something ancient. I think it's connected to the weapon I remember, the one that could stop the Shalrith." Nathan's pulse quickened. If they were getting closer to the weapon, then they were one step closer to winning this war. But there was still so much they didn't know. Lyra had only pieces of the puzzle, and they had no idea what they were walking into. "We need to be careful," Nathan said. "The Shalrith won't let us get close to that weapon easily. They'll have guards, security, everything." "I know," Lyra replied. "But I feel like we're running out of time. I can feel the Shalrith moving closer. I have to know what's here. If there's a chance to stop them, we have to take it." Nathan nodded. He understood the urgency in her voice. "All right, we'll figure this out together." Lyra closed her eyes again, focusing on the strange energy surrounding them. The longer she concentrated, the more she could sense, images flashing in her mind, fragments of memories she didn't fully understand. She saw glimpses of HFY warriors, powerful and noble, guarding something. She saw an ancient chamber, hidden deep beneath the surface of the planet, and she saw the Shalrith cold and calculating, trying to tear everything apart. Then suddenly it all clicked. The weapon. The power they had been searching for. It was not just a tool of destruction. It was something more. It was a force that could change the way minds worked, a weapon that could break the Shalrith's hold over the galaxy. But in order to activate it, she would need more than just her own strength. She would need the help of the HFY people, if any of them were still alive. Lyra gasped, her eyes snapping open. I know where it is, she said, her voice filled with urgency. The weapon is underground in a secret facility beneath the Shalrith stronghold. But there's something else. I can feel it. The HFY warriors used it once, but it's not just a weapon. It's a tool that can free all the minds the Shalrith have controlled. Nathan frowned. So we're talking about more than just taking down the Shalrith, right? Lyra nodded. Yes. If we can activate the weapon, we can break the Shalrith's mind control. We can free the prisoners they've enslaved, including the ones they've turned into soldiers. But it won't be easy. Nathan's mind raced. If this was true, if they could really destroy the Shalrith's power over the galaxy's people, then the war could be over. They could win, but it would require more than just the two of them. They would need a plan, one that was bold, precise, and executed at exactly the right moment. We'll need allies, Nathan said firmly. There's no way we can take the Shalrith stronghold alone. We'll need to find the resistance and bring them in. Lyra hesitated for a moment but then nodded. I agree. The resistance will be crucial, but we'll have to move fast. The Shalrith are getting closer and they're already on high alert. Nathan began to pack up their supplies. We'll find the resistance. I'm sure they've been tracking the Shalrith's movements just like we have. Together, we can bring them down. As they prepared to leave the ruins, Lyra felt a strange sense of clarity. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and she could feel her powers growing stronger with each passing day. But there was still so much she didn't understand, so much about the weapon, the HFY warriors, and the full extent of her abilities. The road ahead would be filled with danger, and they had no guarantees of success. But with Nathan by her side, she felt a glimmer of hope that had been absent for so long. Over the next few days, Nathan and Lyra made their way toward the coordinates Lyra had uncovered. They encountered several Shalrith patrols along the way, but with Nathan's skills and Lyra's growing telepathic abilities, they were able to avoid detection. Lyra's connection to Nathan had deepened, and she could sense his thoughts, his movements, even before he made them. It was like they were connected on a level deeper than just their physical presence. We're close, Lyra said one night as they camped near a forest clearing. I can feel the Shalrith stronghold ahead, but we have to be careful. They'll have security systems in place and the weapon. It's hidden, we'll need to search every inch. Nathan nodded. I'll get us there, you just focus on the weapon, we'll find it. But Lyra's face clouded with concern. There's something else, Nathan. If we do this, if we activate the weapon, we might not be able to control what happens next. It could destroy the Shalrith, or it could unleash something we don't fully understand. Nathan took a deep breath, his gaze steady. I know, but we've come too far to back down now. The galaxy needs us, and we need to finish what we started. Lyra looked into his eyes and saw the unwavering resolve in them. She knew he was right. They couldn't stop now. They had to push forward no matter the risk. The final stage of their journey was upon them. The Shalrith stronghold loomed ahead, and with it, the promise of a galaxy free from their control. But it was also a place of unimaginable danger. They would have to fight their way through, relying on their wits, their courage, and each other. And so, with no turning back, Nathan and Lyra set their sights on the Shalrith stronghold, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. The Shalrith stronghold loomed in the distance, a towering fortress made of dark, alien metal, its walls humming with an unsettling energy. The air around it seemed charged with danger, and Nathan could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. Every step brought them closer to the heart of enemy territory, where the weapon that could end the war was hidden. Lyra walked beside him, her expression focused, but Nathan could sense the fear that still lingered beneath her calm exterior. This was the moment. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, had led them to this point. They had come so far, but the hardest part was still ahead. The Shaurith would stop at nothing to protect their stronghold, and they had no idea what they would face inside. Nathan glanced over at Lyra. "Are you ready?" Lyra nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I have to be, for everyone." Together, they crept closer to the stronghold, using the cover of the night to stay hidden. The fortifications were heavy, and the Shaurith guards patrolled every corner. The entire area was crawling with soldiers, drones, and surveillance systems. But Nathan had trained for this. He knew how to avoid detection. He had infiltrated enemy bases before, and he was determined to do it again. "We'll go through the west entrance," Nathan whispered, pointing to a narrow gap in the wall. "There's less activity there. Once we're inside, we'll find the weapon." Lyra's heart was pounding in her chest. She didn't know exactly what to expect once they reached the weapon, but she could feel its presence inside her mind, like a faint pull guiding her forward. The more she focused, the clearer the path seemed, but that also meant she couldn't back out. There was no turning back now. They moved quickly, staying in the shadows as much as possible. Nathan led the way, his eyes scanning the surroundings. The west entrance was guarded by only a few soldiers, and Nathan took them down silently, his movements precise and swift. They were in. Inside, the stronghold was a maze of dark corridors and cold metal floors. Every step echoed in the silence. The walls seemed to close in around them, but Nathan and Lyra pushed forward. Lyra could feel the weapon's presence growing stronger with each step, like a magnetic pull in her mind. It was close. "We're almost there," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "I can feel it." "The chamber is just ahead." Nathan nodded, but his thoughts were focused on the dangers that lay ahead. The closer they got to the weapon, the more vulnerable they became. The Shaurith would surely be on high alert. The weapon wasn't just a tool, it was their greatest asset, and the Shaurith wouldn't give it up without a fight. As they approached the final door, Lyra's telepathic abilities flared. The room beyond was filled with the thoughts of the Shaurith, angry, violent, and cold. They could sense them on the other side, ready to defend their territory with everything they had. Nathan pulled Lyra back into the shadows, his hand resting on his weapon. "We need a plan," Nathan said, his voice low but steady. "We can't go in blind. I'll take out the guards and you focus on the weapon." Lyra nodded, her mind already reaching out, trying to connect with the room beyond the door. She could feel the cold minds of the Shaurith, but there was something else. Something hidden, something waiting. "We don't have much time," she said urgently. "The weapon is starting to react, I think it's alive. It knows we're coming." Nathan's heart raced. "Let's go." With a signal, Nathan stepped forward, opening the door. The Shaurith guards inside didn't even have time to react. Nathan moved like a shadow, taking down each one with swift precision. His training kicked in and he cleared the room in moments. "Lyra, now," Nathan called. Lyra rushed forward, her eyes fixed on the center of the room. There in the middle stood a large, dark stone pedestal. On top of it rested an ancient-looking device, glowing faintly with blue light. The weapon. It was more than just a weapon. It was a living, breathing entity. The energy pulsing from it was unlike anything she had ever felt before. Lyra's heart raced as she reached out with her mind. She could feel the weapon's power, but it was wild, untamed. She wasn't sure if she could control it, but she had no choice. She closed her eyes, focusing everything she had on the device, pushing through the barrier in her mind that had held her back for so long. The weapon responded, its energy flowing into her like a flood. Images flashed in her mind, ZH Lorian warriors from long ago, fighting to protect their people, using the weapon to turn the tide of battle. The weapon was more than just a tool of destruction. It was a symbol of hope, of freedom. It could break the Shalrith's hold on the galaxy, but it could also unleash chaos if not controlled. Lyra gasped as the power surged through her, nearly overwhelming her senses. She could feel the Shalrith guards closing in, but she didn't have time to think. The weapon was awakening, and she needed to control it before it was too late. "Lyra!" Nathan shouted, running toward her as the door to the room burst open and more Shalrith soldiers flooded in. "We need to go, now," but Lyra couldn't move. She was locked in place, her mind consumed by the power of the weapon. She could feel the Shalrith closing in, their minds full of rage and hatred, but she couldn't pull herself away. The weapon was calling to her, urging her to unlock its full potential. "You have to break free, Lyra," Nathan yelled, grabbing her arm and pulling her away from the pedestal. "Come on, we're not done yet." Lyra's eyes snapped open, and for a moment she saw nothing but white light. The power of the weapon was too much to contain, but then something inside her clicked. She had control. The weapon wasn't just a tool, it was an extension of herself. She could use it, but she needed to focus. With a sharp cry, Lyra pushed the power outward, unleashing a wave of energy that sent the Shalrith soldiers flying back. The room shook with the force of it, and for a moment Nathan thought they might not make it. But Lyra was in control now. The weapon was hers to wield. "We have to leave," Nathan said, urgency in his voice. "We need to get to the extraction point before the entire stronghold comes down on us." Lyra nodded, breathing heavily, her mind still reeling from the overwhelming power she had just tapped into. She followed Nathan as they sprinted out of the room, the sounds of explosions echoing behind them. The Shalrith would not give up easily, but they had the weapon. They had the power to change everything. They made their way back through the stronghold, using the chaos they had created to slip past the remaining guards. Nathan's heart raced as he led the way, his hand on his weapon, ready for anything. They had to get out before the Shalrith regrouped. When they finally reached the extraction point, a small ship waiting in the distance, Nathan looked back at the burning stronghold. It was crumbling, and the explosion of energy they had triggered was tearing through the base. The Shalrith would be defeated. The galaxy would be free. "We did it," Nathan said, breathing a sigh of relief. Lyra looked out at the wreckage, her heart still racing. "We did, but the war isn't over yet." Nathan nodded. "No, but it's a start." As they boarded the ship and flew into the unknown, the future of the galaxy was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt hope. They had fought back. They had won. And now they could finally rebuild.